The Raiders suffer another big loss without even playing a game. That plus more on Monday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for December 16th, 2024.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome here, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. We definitely appreciate you, whether you catch us wherever you find your favorite podcast or if you're checking us out on the YouTube page. Either way, we appreciate that. If you are checking us out on YouTube, got to give a big shout out to my man Ari, who does a fantastic job behind the scenes, making sure we look good and sound good each and every day. And the reason why we have the Locked On Raider podcast YouTube page is because of Ari. So shout him out. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well, as many of you do, at your boy Q254. And if you want to be a part of the show, as many of you do, you can also hit up the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. We'll close out the show today with your calls and texts, plenty of feedback, all the conversations that we've been having, and of course, games coming up, including game today, Monday Night Football, Raiders and the Falcons. So we'll close out the show in segment number 3 with your calls and texts, all your feedback. Segment number 2, what are we looking for in today's game? What is it that I'll be looking for and paying attention to as the Raiders host the Falcons at Allegiant Stadium, Monday Night Football, prime time action. So that'll be segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. I have a few players from the Silver and Black that I really want to point out. So we'll do that then. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day, as I always do. And really some bad news when it comes to the Raiders and their roster and their star player, Max Crosby. We'll jump into that after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. It's never too late to jump into the season with the big return on FanDuel. New customers could place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. And before I jump into any Raiders roster news, I did want to go ahead and send along this happy birthday text. Got this on the Locked On Raider podcast text line, the voicemail text line. This is coming from Petey from Wilmington, California, and I'm sorry I missed this. He said, "Hey, Q, was just wondering if you can give a big birthday shout out to my uncle Ruben on December 14th. He's a huge fan of the Raiders, listens to your podcast first thing in the morning on his way to work. He got me to listen to the podcast, and now I do the same. He was hoping to meet you at the Raider game when they played the Panthers, but it just didn't shake out that way, so figured a shout out would suffice. I know if he hears this, it'll make his day. Thanks for all that you do, Q. Go Raiders." And thank you so much, Petey, for the text. Sorry I missed it. Sorry it's a couple days later, but hopefully Uncle Ruben is listening, and happy birthday, my man. Happy belated birthday, and hell, celebrate your birthday all month. Why not? I do it all the time, so you might as well do it as well. So Uncle Ruben, thanks so much for listening to the show, checking it out, and also turning Petey on to the show. Definitely appreciate that. Next time you're at a Raider game, make sure that I'll meet you at the Torch. And anyone going to the Torch and going to the game today, make sure you come by the Torch at Allegiant Stadium. I'll start my radio show at 1 o'clock, probably sign off around 3:30, but I'll be there until about 5:15, probably about 15 minutes before kickoff. Then I'll make my way to the press box. So if you are around Allegiant Stadium, if you are going to the game, please come by. I'd love to shake your hand and say what's up, and thank you for listening to the show. Definitely appreciate that. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the injury report that rolled out for us on Saturday. And, the biggest news is Max Crosby is not only out today, but he's out the rest of the season. And it was wild seeing Max Crosby and him appear on the injury report and with the ankle injury, and on Thursday did not participate. I thought, okay, well, maybe it's just because he's a vet, and I know he's been dealing with this ankle injury all, season long. So they probably just didn't want him out there. Then on Friday, it's like, okay, he did not participate. I was like, all right, well, I think he should be good. It's still Max Crosby. He doesn't really need to practice. Then Saturday, all of a sudden, got the injury report, DNP, and out. And I was like, whoa, hold on. Wait, what's coming? What's going on, right? Because, again, it's just so rare. Max Crosby's only missed one game in his career, and that was earlier this season. So it's very rare to see Max Crosby out. And then pretty quickly after that, we found out that he's actually out for the season. As a matter of fact, here's he announced it on Instagram. Apparently, he announced that he was going to be out for the season. But here's Ian Rappaport from NFL Network, Rap Sheet, talking about Max Crosby, what he's going through, and the fact that he is going to be out for the rest of the season.
Max Crosby, the star edge rusher for the Las Vegas Raiders, who is now expected to be out for the season. He has been battling really this entire year, ever since week 3, a high ankle sprain. First hurt it in week 3, then actually re-aggravated it against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers a week ago. He has officially been declared out for Monday, and while his team plays on Monday night, he is expected to be meeting with Dr. Robert Anderson, one of the nation's experts for feet and ankle. He is expected to have surgery to repair this ankle injury. Tried everything he possibly could, guys, to stay on the field. It was not to be. Max Crosby faces a 2 to 4 month recovery. He said, if you have any doubts, if you think I need to chill, good, just watch me.
So didn't really realize that he had re-injured that ankle on Sunday against Tampa Bay. Did not know that because, well, I wasn't there on the road. Didn't get to talk to him in the locker room. I did see him in the Raiders locker room on Wednesday earlier this week, and he looked like he was in pretty good spirits. But obviously, it's all bad, and he has to have surgery, and he's seeing a specialist, and he's going to be out the rest of the season. And that just stinks for the guy who is the heartbeat, the heart and soul of this Raiders team, a guy who loves to be out there. He talks about it all the time. For him to be out is just, man. That's just another big blow, right? We talk about the injuries, and we always talk about it's not an excuse for struggling. It's not an excuse for only having 2 wins on the season. But, man, the Raiders have been hit with some injuries to some big-time key players, Max Crosby being the latest one of them, and now he's going to be out the rest of the season. So guys like K'Lavon Chaisson, guys like Tyree Wilson, guys like Charles Snowden, if, in fact, they're playing, they're going to have to step up in a major way. But looking at the rest of the injury report, for Saturday, Hobbs looks good to go. Full participant on Saturday, so he should play today. That's good. Alexander Madison, full participant Saturday. He should play today. Adam Butler's been dealing with the concussion. He has to pass concussion protocol. He's questionable. I mentioned Crosby is out. Doubtful is Sam Webb, the cornerback. He's been dealing with a back injury. And then Aiden O'Connell, who's been dealing with the knee injury, the bone bruise that he suffered on Sunday versus Tampa Bay, is questionable. Now, my gut feeling tells me Desmond Ridder is going to start. I don't think that they're ruling Aiden O'Connell. They're not going to rule him out just because I think that they wanted to make Atlanta prepare for both quarterbacks. I just gut feeling. I just can't see Aiden O'Connell going on a week like that, to play after having that bone bruise and leaving the game the way that he did. But you never know. And I know that he wants to play. There's no doubt. When we spoke to him on Wednesday at the facility, there's no doubt that he wants to, but just not being able to practice and participate all week long in practice, to me, just feels like the inevitable is going to be Desmond Ridder will start. But we'll talk about that in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. For the Falcons, 2 guys that are out: Troy Anderson, the inside linebacker with a knee injury, and then Casey Washington, the wide receiver, who's dealing with a concussion. But obviously the big news was Max Crosby not being available for not only today's game, but the rest of the way, which will be 3 more following today. Also, speaking of Rap Sheet, we had heard from Rap Sheet talking about Max Crosby and what he's got going on, and while his team is playing, what he's going to be doing, trying to get that ankle right so he can come back and be ready to go next season. Rap Sheet was also talking about Bill Belichick, and I'm sure you're wondering, wait, hold on, how does Bill Belichick have anything to do with the Raiders? Well, apparently, now that he's the North Carolina head football coach, he has some interest in a certain coach that is currently on the Raiders coaching staff. So here's Ian Rappaport not only talking about Bill Belichick, what coach he's interested in hiring, but also Tom Brady and what his role will be with the Raiders moving forward as a minority owner. Check it out.
Michael, let's talk about a former Giants defensive coordinator who went on to do some other things. Bill Belichick officially signed his deal with the University of North Carolina this week, an earth-shaking move in college football, one that was certainly a curiosity in the NFL. Since that time, since he signed his deal and had that press conference, we've learned a couple of details. First of all, sources confirm the Athletic report that Bill Belichick actually reached out to the Jets, specifically Mike Tannenbaum, who is helping with the search, just to see if there would be interest before he accepted his deal. Obviously, Jets said, we are not there yet. Also, my understanding is one of Belichick's top choices for offensive coordinator is Scott Turner, who's current OC at the Raiders. Speaking of the Raiders, Tom Brady was in the news this week, specifically as it relates to his ownership of the Raiders. I talked to owner Mark Davis about this week. He told me Tom Brady will have a huge voice in the organization when it comes to picking the quarterback. He said he has always been seeking someone to help oversee the football division. He told me he believes Tom Brady can do that, Rich.
So Scott Turner, I know that the points per game has not been a lot better for the Raiders since Scott Turner took over, but I think we all could be in agreement, and it's very rare that we're all in agreement, but I think we could all be in agreement that the offense has looked a lot smoother. It's looked a lot better. It made sense now that he's been the interim offensive coordinator, him and Norv Turner. But Bill Belichick apparently is very high on the list, Scott Turner, for his offensive coordinator there at North Carolina. So that'll be interesting. Also interesting is what Ian Rappaport said, which is kind of something that I already believed, and I know that the conversation had been going on, that Bill Belichick went back to college because, well, Bill Belichick wasn't going to have a job in the National Football League. Again, it's funny. I was saying that the other day, and I had some guys coming at me. Oh, that's just your opinion. No. That's actually the consensus conversation that's been going around for quite a while. And so that's just kind of further evidence to that he was interested in the Jets of all teams, which is kind of funny, but they do have an opening. And apparently they were not interested in Bill Belichick. So now he's the head football coach in North Carolina. And good for him. Not mad at him, taking his game to college. And I'll tell you what, North Carolina football has not been talked about as much as it's been talked about in the last, 2 weeks since Bill Belichick even became part of the conversation. And then you heard what Ian Rappaport had to say about Tom Brady, and that just goes in lockstep with what we heard from Mark Davis at the owners' meetings in Dallas last week, where he wants Tom Brady to be very heavily involved in what goes on with this team moving forward. So, there's been a lot of people that have wondered what the role of Brady is going to be, including myself, because, Mark Davis has never come out and said anything, and Tom Brady hasn't had a formal press conference or anything and said what he's going to do. But after hearing what MD had to say at the owners' meetings and then hearing Rap Sheet as well, sounds like that not only is Tom Brady going to help find the next quarterback for the Silver and Black, but he's going to have a lot to do with player personnel. He may be something like a, president of player personnel. We know Tom Telesco is the general manager, but even though Tom Brady is a minority owner, so the title might not be player personnel president, it feels like and it sounds like he's going to play a role that's very similar to that. So that's the news and notes collected over the weekend for you. Coming up in segment number 2, what will I be looking at for Monday Night Football? Raiders, Falcons, Allegiant Stadium. Some players to stand out and some players to pay attention to is what I'll break down. We'll do that next in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about a couple of great sponsors here on the Locked On Raiders podcast, including BetterHelp. And we know it's the holiday time. We know that some people love the holidays. They love sitting around with the family. They love having dinner and exchanging gifts and maybe being off work a little bit and traveling, whatever the case may be. Whatever tickles some folks' fancy, the holidays are fantastic. For others, it could be pretty stressful. It can provide some anxiety. It could be something that you're never looking forward to. And to be honest with you, for no actual reason, I feel like I probably fall in that category, the second category, more than others, where it's causes a little bit of anxiety, maybe even a little bit of a stress. Either way, that's just kind of what happens, and everyone is different. So if you've ever thought about trying therapy, you should give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Fill out a brief questionnaire. You'll get matched with a licensed therapist, a switch therapist at any time for no additional charge. And there's never a conversation that's too big or too little to actually use therapy for. And it can help, especially when you're talking things out with someone who does not have an agenda on your life. And right now you can find comfort this December with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, BetterHelp.com/lockedon. I also want to tell you about the college football playoffs. It is that time of year. The college football playoff is back. And with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoffs begins December 21st, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern, leading into their first matchup, the Southern Methodist University Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate, live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. What to look for in tonight's Monday Night Football matchup, the Atlanta Falcons and the Las Vegas Raiders. And, of course, the Raiders come in at 2-11. They have no playoffs. They have no Max Crosby. They're banged up. They're battered. They're bruised. They've got a lot of questions going into this game. They've got 3 more after this one, then game, set, match. It will be off into the offseason and expected to be a very eventful offseason, to say the least. But there are still games to be played. There are still players to focus in on. And that's what I want to talk about here in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. A lot of times I like to talk about keys to victory. And to be 100% honest, I don't know if the Raiders, depending on who the Raiders start at quarterback, if it's Aiden O'Connell, I feel like they have a chance to win. If it's Desmond Ridder, I don't feel like they have a chance to win. I just don't think he's a very good quarterback. But if he is going out there starting against his former team, we'll see what he brings to the table. But there are certain players that I'm really focused in on. And it's funny, NFL Communications does a really good job of sending little nuggets and notes all the time of, historical moments that could be had. And then the Raiders do a really good job as well when they have certain players that are doing some really good things. And it's funny that as I'm thinking in my head, well, who am I looking for? Who am I paying attention to in this game? What am I looking for? It kind of lines up with the guys that NFL Communications have pointed out, and also the Raiders. So Jacoby Myers, that's my brother with an extra E in his last name. My dad always says we couldn't afford the extra E in Myers, so it's Meyers, Jacoby. But no, shout out to him. He's been doing a fantastic job ever since being a member of the Silver and Black. Dave Ziegler and company signed him as a free agent a couple of seasons ago. With 57 receiving yards, he would have his fourth straight season of 800-plus yards, becoming one of only 9 undrafted players in NFL history to record 4 straight seasons or more with 800-plus receiving yards. I could stop right there talking about Jacoby Myers. Dude is incredible. Like, he doesn't worry about numbers. He doesn't get too flashy. He's not trying to do too much. He's just basically, he does everything that he needs to do. Every time he's out there on the grass, he's out there blocking if that's what it causes. If he needs to get open and catch a ball, he'll do that. He has a drop radius of 0. Right? I mean, he just doesn't put balls on the ground. If they're near him, he's catching them. And it's so funny. I've told this story 1,000 times, and I'll probably tell it 1,000 more. It goes back to the conversations 2 media days ago with JT the Brick and Eric Allen, and we first got a chance to catch up with Jacoby, and EA said, well, how do you get open? He said, I don't know, man. I just get open. And we all kind of looked at him like, okay, he's just, he doesn't really want to talk. He's like, no, I just get open. And, I know you study film, but I study film too, and I'm just gonna get open. He's not the fastest dude. He's not that guy that's gonna take the top off of defenses and all that, but he just does literally what he said, finds a way to get open. He would also only become one of 6 undrafted players in NFL history to record 800-plus receiving yards in at least 4 of his first 6 seasons in the NFL. That's awesome. So I look forward to like milestones like that. And I root for guys to achieve goals like that. So Jacoby Myers, 57 receiving yards. I don't care if it's Desmond Ridder or Aiden O'Connell. We'll love to see him achieve that. We've talked a lot on the show about Brock Bowers, the stud rookie tight end out of Georgia, and what he's done so far his rookie year. With 67 receiving yards, he would reach 1,000 receiving yards. One of only 3 tight ends in NFL history to reach 1,000 receiving yards in his first NFL season. Think about that. Think about all the great tight ends in NFL history with an H, capital H, right? And he would be one of only 3 to reach 1,000 yards his rookie year, joining Kyle Pitts, Hall of Famer, and Hall of Famer tight end Mike Ditka. Right? Pretty good company right there. Bowers would also join Amari Cooper as one of the only 2 players in Raiders history to reach 1,000-plus receiving yards as a rookie. With 67 receiving yards, would also notch one of 4 instances a tight end of any experience level in Raiders history has reached 1,000-plus receiving yards in his first 14 games of a single season. Pretty impressive as well. I mean, he's just doing incredible things. He already owns the most receptions in NFL history by a tight end in their rookie year and has 87 catches through 13 games of his rookie season. Also, the most receptions in a single season in Raiders history by a rookie. He's just, again, I can sing his praises all the time. I'm hoping that he ends up breaking the all-time record of receptions for a rookie that's held by Puka Nacua of 105. He needs 19 catches for that. I would love to see him get around 115. Like, I'm not going to sit there and say force feed him. But I'll tell you what, every time I see 89 catch a ball, it's another check mark. All right, that's one more. All right, that's one more. Every time he gets some yards, okay, it's closer to 67. Like, I want him to achieve those goals. Look, there's not a lot to get excited about this season. The Raiders are 2-11. But to have a dude that is that fantastic as a rookie with all the quarterbacks he's had throw him the rock, yeah, I'm rooting for that. So again, there's small victories, even though these games have not turned out the way that we want them to. Another guy that I'm rooting for, Sincere McCormick, right? He's come on pretty strong. He's averaging 5.5 yards per carry. It's the second best mark in Raiders history among players in their first 4 career games, minimum 30 attempts, trailing only Bo Jackson, who had 6.2 yards in 87. Think about this. You want to figure out and kind of understand what Sincere McCormick has meant to the Raiders since he's entered action. He's only been in 4 games. He has 175 total yards, right? And you're thinking, okay, 175 yards. Great. What does that mean? What it means is the leading rusher for the Raiders is Alexander Mattison with 320 in 10 games. In 10 games. So the Raiders have not had a run game all season long. We know that. Antonio Pierce has wanted to run the rock. We know that. That was something that he talked about ever since he took over as interim coach last year. Wants to run the rock downhill. They only have their leading rusher is at 320 yards through 10 games. Sincere McCormick in limited carries. Remember his first game he played, he only had 4 carries? And then he had 2 games of 15 carries? And what one other? I mean, he doesn't have very many carries, and he's up to 175 yards, and the leading rusher is at 320. I got a chance to catch up with Sincere McCormick in the Raiders locker room on Wednesday, and just kind of asked him how the game is starting to slow down to him, and he said he's starting to feel like UTSA Sincere McCormick. He said, pass pro was something that I had to make sure I continue to work on so I could stay on the field for all 3 downs. But he said, look, I'm going to make the most of my opportunity, and that's the right attitude to have. This is a lost season for the team. But it's not a lost season for Sincere McCormick. I've said it before on the show. I feel like he can prove that he can be a good, partner in that running back room. He could be a part of a strong tandem. I do believe the Raiders will go into the draft next year and bring out, and draft a running back as well to go with them. But with that style that he has, he's not the biggest dude, but man, I mean, he's hard to get down. He doesn't go down on first contact, does he? I mean, he'll spin, he'll juke, he'll truck. I mean, those were his words, not mine. I mean, he's in a great spot right now, and he's still fresh because he's only played in 4 games so far this season. So I'm excited to see what else he can do. So as much as I want to see Jacoby get his 57 receiving yards, I want to see Brock Bowers get his 67 receiving yards, I want to see Sincere McCormick get over 100 yards, right? He hasn't done it yet. He's gotten to 78 and 75, in that range a couple times. Would love to see him hit that 100-yard mark. That would be fantastic. Again, I don't know what that means as far as if the Raiders are going to win the game or not. Again, with Desmond Ridder at the quarterback, if that is who's going to be the quarterback, I have my doubts, but we'll see. But going back to Sincere McCormick, again, talking about he's the second best mark, his 5.5 yards per carry, second best mark in Raiders history among players in their first 4 career games. Bo Jackson at 6.2, Sincere McCormick 5.5, Darren McFadden 5.3, Josh Jacobs 5.0, and Napoleon Kaufman at 4.6. So pretty impressed there. Also, since Max Crosby is not only out for this game, but out for the season, Tyree Wilson, Clavon Chason, a lot of heavy lifting is going to be done by those guys, the edge rushers. Tyree Wilson clearly has not lived up to the billing after being drafted number 7 overall just a year ago, but now's his time to shine, right? Antonio Pierce always says, what does this team look like without Max Crosby on the field? To the point where during training camp, he would pull him off the field just so those guys would go out there and play without him. Well, Chason wasn't with the team in training camp, but he's been coming on pretty strong as of late. So he has an opportunity to prove that he deserves a contract extension. His contract is over at the end of the year. So he's playing to prove his spot in the NFL, not just with the Raiders, but in the NFL. Would love to see him step up. Tyree was drafted to be Chandler Jones' replacement. And we all know how it went south real quick with Chandler Jones. And Tyree Wilson hasn't lived up to that billing yet. But now's an opportunity, these last 4 games starting today, that he could be that guy and be that running buddy when Max Crosby comes back next year, strong, ready to go. Tyree could be that guy, or maybe Clavon Chason. They can prove their worth these last handful of games to the powers that be, the folks in the front office that matter. Charles Snowden, is he going to play? I'm not too sure since he was the one that was arrested on suspicion of DUI. Don't know. I mean, he was at practice, so I'm assuming he's going to play, but that's just an assumption on my part. We'll find out when it comes to the inactives 90 minutes before kickoff. We'll see if he's going to be out there or not. And then, of course, who's going to play quarterback, Aiden O'Connell or Desmond Ridder? Again, my gut feeling tells me it's going to be Desmond Ridder, but the fact that Aiden O'Connell hasn't been ruled out as of yet, depending on what time you're listening to this, gives him an opportunity to go out there and play. I do think Aiden O'Connell will play again this season. I just don't think he's going to play in this game tonight. But that, again, is just my gut feeling. So what's on your mind? Your calls and texts are next at 707-654-4693. We'll do that in segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about our other great partner here on the show, and that is FanDuel. And you can jump into the season at any time with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, all new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, and it's all in one place. So if you get a hunch in the middle of the game, check it out with the latest stats. You can check out the live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts are after that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start off with Derek from Hemet. He's calling to throw something out there in the universe and somehow, some way, Derek Carr's name has popped back up. Here he is, Derek from Hemet.
Q, Derek from Hemet. I wanted to throw something out in the universe, and I really need you to kind of expand on it and see if it's even a possibility. And I know you're sick and tired of the Derek Carr situation, the events, whatever. But hear me out. Hear me out. So I was talking to a client today about the situation in wherever the Saints are from, New Orleans, brain fart. And he had maybe made a suggestion or threw out an idea that I think Derek Carr will be hitting free agency this year, or I don't know what his contract deal is, don't really know. But since he got his coach fired, I believe, I don't know the situation surrounding that. But if he does hit free agency, I'm pretty sure that he left our organization on good terms. It was just McDaniels and that whole debacle. Do you think there's even a sliver of probability that Derek Carr could rejoin our organization on a veteran trainer kind of quarterback position with Aiden O'Connell and maybe either Caleb Ward or Shador Sanders and play for the Raiders in that capacity? Again, just throwing it out there, seeing if it's even feasible. Q, I'd appreciate some insight on that. And again, I did call you unprepared because I have no idea what happened with Derek Carr's coach, or if it was an OT. 100% not sure what happened, but what I talked about with my coworker or my class with O'Connell and the young quarterback, I feel like that would be an optimal training situation for not only the rookie quarterback, but also O'Connell, being with a veteran that obviously had some sort of cohesiveness with the team, obviously before the whole McDaniels debacle started. I know you hate talking about Derek Carr, and I know you say all the time we can move past it, but shed some light, and can you please put a little bit of time in exploring that for me? Q, I appreciate you. Derek from Hemet, out.
Derek, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. Look, Carr's under contract through 2026, right? He does have an out after this season, but he'd have like a $50 million dead cap hit for the Saints if they were going to cut him. So I really don't see that happening. I mean, it's not impossible. I just don't think that the Raiders would be interested in that. I really don't. I think that once they made the move from Carr, I think they made the move from Carr again. And that's not me, but it's just, I just feel like that they're pretty comfortable with him being away from the team and them moving forward and getting their next quarterback instead of looking back at their ex. Again, that's just my gut feeling. Again, there's no shade to Derek. I say it all the time. He did some great things with the Raiders. He stabilized that quarterback position, and finally they made a move to move on from him. The only mistake that they made, in my opinion, was not having a true replacement identified before they made that move. Now they've been in quarterback carousel ever since. So we'll see what happens in the offseason if Tom Brady is able to do what Mark Davis is hoping that he's going to do, which is identify and find and locate and bring in the Raiders' next quarterback. So, Derek, thanks so much for that call. Definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Stabler's Ghost. What's up, Q? Stabler's Ghost from the 413. I haven't contacted you in a bit. The season's been brutal. I was all for AP after what he did as an interim, but he's got to go. He restored the culture, but that doesn't excuse bad coaching. His time management is the worst we've seen in a long time. We need a top 2 pick to get who we need in the draft. I'm actually scared we might stumble into a win when it would be better for the franchise to lose. If we're not making the playoffs, we might as well get the best pick we can. It hurts to root for them to lose, but we need to look to the future. Later, Q. Raiders. That's from Stabler's Ghost. And I mean, hey, look, like I said, I'm always open to everyone's opinion. I could appreciate that. I feel like that there's a lot of reasons why AP and this team has struggled this year, but he very well could be one and done. Right, it's not something that is never heard of, right? I mean, we know that it's a possibility, and especially with the different folks that are going to be making decisions in the offseason, it very well could be a wrap. There's many people out there that believe it is a wrap. There's many people out there that are really deep into the NFL and talk to a lot of people that matter that believe that he'll be one and done. I personally keep saying that I feel like continuity is king. I feel like that they need to have the same coach at least for another year, give him an opportunity with hopefully a healthy roster and a quarterback that he really truly wants and believes can win with them. But that there's a lot that goes into that, right? Is he going to be able to put the right coaching staff around said quarterback or whatever the case may be? Like, these are all real deal conversations. So there's a lot that goes into it, but I totally understand. And believe me, Stable as Ghost, you're not the first person that's called in or texted in and said that he's got to go. So I definitely appreciate the text as always. Up next, got a call from John in El Paso. He's calling to talk about AP and if Deion Sanders, prime time, might have something to say about his job status. Here he is, John from El Paso.
What's up, Q? This is John over here in El Paso, Texas. I met you last year. I think I met you a couple of times, actually, at one of the pregame parties. Met you and your family. Going to be out there this weekend. Check out the Atlanta game for Monday. Hopefully I run into you again. But I just wanted to run something by you, man. I was wondering what you think about this. I know that Shador has been, coming out publicly, as well as Deion, and expressing their interest in playing for the Raiders and having the Raiders draft them. Do you think it's possible that he might have more say in whether or not AP continues as our head coach than most people think? Maybe they have I'm sure he's had some conversations with Mark Davis and possibly Brady, and I just wonder if Shador and Deion have expressed interest and said, hey, we will pull this Eli Manning deal where we only want to be drafted by the Raiders, under the condition that AP stays as head coach. I've seen a couple things where Deion and AP have been in the same place and seems like they get along pretty well. Just wondering what you think about that. Do you think that they might have a say, hypothetically, if they get drafted by the Raiders, they want AP as the head coach to stay on? Anyway, let me know what you think, Q. And like I said, hopefully I'll see you over in at the stadium this weekend. Thanks. Bye.
John, thanks for the call. Appreciate you. And hopefully I get to see you later on at the Torch today, man. Make sure you come on by and say what's up. And it's funny, the conversation about Deion Sanders and if he has some influence on AP's job status, that's come up before because of Shador and because of the relationship with Tom Brady and the fact that it really looks like Shador is going to be destined to be a Raiders quarterback. And we'll see how that plays out. I think that would be a bad approach to it if Deion could say, hey, I want my guy to play here, but I also want him to play for this coach. And, I just think that wouldn't be a good approach to it. But, you never know. Honestly, I say it all the time. People say, is it fun covering the Raiders? Because they're not winning. I'm like, man, it's never a dull moment. That's for sure. There's always something to talk about. You never know. Like I said, I don't think that Deion would have that kind of pull. I know he's really tight with the organization. He's tight with Mark Davis. He's tight with Tom Brady. He's tight with Sandra Douglas Morgan, the president. He's tight with AP, as you mentioned. So, there may be a little something there, but I don't know. Like I said, I think it would be a bad idea if they were to do it that way. But again, you never know how things could shake out. But thanks so much for that call. I do appreciate you. And like I said, man, if you do get by the Torch, make sure you come by and say what's up. Up next, got a text from Art in the 209. Says, Q, what is the difference between our last 9 games last year to our first 14 games this season for Antonio Pierce? We had an intern coach, attitude, fighting for every win, not play to lose. We must bring back that nothing to lose attitude, make our opponent feel that pain, not a get right game. That's Art in the 209. And yeah, there's a lot to be said about that, right? And it also is a lot to be said about being the interim coach. You figured you had nothing to lose, right? You had nothing to lose because you're not supposed to get the job anyway, right? So, there's a lot to be said about that. There could be too many, coaches along the staff. Someone said it the other day. I can't remember who it was, if it was here on the show or if it was on my radio show, Unnecessary Roughness on Red Nation Radio 920. Someone said that Antonio Pierce, when he got the coach as the head coach, he did like MC Hammer, where he tried to save the whole city of Oakland. And if you don't know what that reference is, when MC Hammer was really big in Oakland, like everybody was a backup dancer. Hell, I probably could have been a backup dancer if I had asked, right? It's like he tried to put all the homies on. Like, hey man, oh, you need a job? Cool, come on the road. Let's be a backup dancer. He had the biggest, entourage. It was 50 people on stage dancing, right? And so basically what they were trying to say is Antonio Pierce brought along so many people on the coaching staff that could have hurt him. I don't know if that's the real situation. We have had those conversations about, is there too many cooks in the kitchen? Could he thin out that coaching staff and make it make a lot more sense? Probably, right? That could be a part of it. But like I said, no matter what happens, if he's one and done or if he stays along and is coaching next year, there's no doubt in my mind, as Mark Davis said earlier or last week at the owners' meetings in Dallas, that they'll sit down and evaluate at the end of the season. So he'll have to sit down and roll out whatever plan he has or whatever plan he believes can work. It'll be on him to roll that out in front of the powers that be, and then they'll make a decision at the end of the day. Whether we think that he's coaching not to lose, he's coaching scared, he's not a good game management, whatever the case may be, that'll all come out in the wash. That's why I'm not pounding the table and getting too worked up as others are, because at the end of the day, none of it's going to matter. He's going to sit down in front of the folks that matter, and he's going to plead his case and say why he should come back, and they're going to make a decision on, yeah, he should, or no, he shouldn't. It'll be just that simple. So thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. Up next, and I just got time for a couple more. EMC Raider. He's delivering a PSA to Raider Nation. Here he is, EMC Raider.
Hey, Q, what's up? This is EMC Raider. Hey, I just want to, I don't know, man. I was listening to the podcast, and I'm just so tired of Raider Nation putting words in your mouth. I'm so tired of them hearing something like a trigger word, and then everything else gets tuned out, and they go, well, you said this or you said that. Raider Nation, stop. Do what your parents did, or maybe they didn't do it. Listen to what he is saying. Stop getting triggered by trigger words. All right, Q. Have a good one. Later.
EMC Raider, thanks for the call. And exactly what you said about listening is why I try to reiterate things and explain things with as many details as possible. And I don't know how many times I'll say, okay, now look, again, this is what I'm saying. I'm not saying that injuries are an excuse. I'm asking how much weight do they carry with you? But like you said, there's certain words that people hear and then they tune out, and everything is, blah, 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 blah after that. And so then they're already got stuck in their mind what they want to hear or what they believe that they did hear. I'm never here to argue. Conversations are fine. It's cool to disagree. I'm good with that. But it's when shots try to get fired at people and folks try to make it personal and everything, I'm really not here for that. So I'm glad you understand. I'm glad that you understand it. But sometimes, like you said, there's some folks that just don't. But appreciate the call, EMC. Really good to hear from you. And we'll close out with one more text. This one's from Ghost. So we had Stabler's Ghost. Now we just got Ghost. It says, hey, Q. Ghost here in the 804, Richmond, Virginia. Something's been on my mind. It's the amount of injuries on the team this season's going back to the preseason. At what point do we question conditioning of the players? It seems to me that AP tends to give the players a lot of time off and does not seem to be focused on practices as other coaches. Am I alone on this? It calls to mind a Gruden quote where he said in the old days we'd practice in the afternoon 2 more times in pads. Nowadays I would get incarcerated for that. Curious on your thoughts, as it seems that players practice less and get injured more, even on natural turf. Sorry for the long text. Love what you do. That's from Ghost. Thanks so much for the text. And I think there's something to that. I don't think it's Antonio Pierce, though, just relative to him. Like, I don't think it's exclusive to him. I think that's something with the collective bargaining, the CBA right now. And that's something that Lincoln Kennedy tells me all the time. It's like, Q, you need to practice. You need to get hit. You need to have pads on. These guys literally, I was there for training camp every single day. They were there 17 days. And they had probably, if I go back on my calendar, they probably had 6, maybe 7 padded practices at most. It wasn't a whole lot, right? And so this is what Lincoln Kennedy always tells me, like, Q, you can't all of a sudden start the season, go from doing nothing, then go 100 miles an hour and think you can do everything. Your body is not going to be able to adjust like that. And that's why, like they say back in the day, they had, how many weeks of training camp did they have? 7 preseason games or something like that? They had a lot that they had going on. And Lincoln tells me that all the time, that is a big reason why you're seeing not only injuries with the Raiders, but everyone across the league, because you go from doing nothing in training camp, you do very little in practice, and then all of a sudden, boom, 1,000 miles an hour in a real game, and your body just can't adjust to it like that. So, yeah, good observation on your part. You're absolutely right about that. And I don't know if there's anything you could do about it, because this is something that's been negotiated by the NFLPA. So they don't want to have all those practices. They don't want to have 2-a-days. They don't want to have multiple padded practices. They just don't want to have that. And they're not playing in the preseason. That's something to do with it. as well. Really good stuff, Ghost. I do appreciate you, and that's all I got time for on today's show. Went a little bit longer than supposed to, but it's the day of the game. It's Monday Night Football, right? It's the only prime time action that the Raiders have this season, so thought we'd go a little bit longer and get as much feedback in as possible. So enjoy the game tonight. If you are going to be there, I'll be at the Torch again. My show starts at 1. It'll get wrapped up about 3:30, and I'll be there till probably about 5:15 before I make my way to the press box. Would love to shake your hand. Thank you for listening to the show and just chop it up a little Raider football with you. So if I meet you tonight, awesome. If I don't, we'll talk tomorrow. It's going to be a long night, but it's okay. That's what we're here for, right? That's what we do. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.